When doing blunt fakies, the first thing you need to do is have a look at our foot positioning. It should look something like this. Let's start with our back foot. Now, what you do with your back foot is super important, as it's going to determine the leverage and pop that you can generate for this trick. Since this is the case, you must have your back foot on the tail with your heel hanging off. Your front foot is far less important, as you don't need to do anything with it. In fact, all you really need to do is prevent it from getting in the way. But more on that later. Naturally, I recommend placing it over the front bolts, but you can place it anywhere that you feel comfortable. With foot positioning out the way, we can begin rolling up the transition. Start by approaching the ramp with a little more speed than you would for a rock fakie. Having your back foot on the tail will allow you to lift your front wheels to clear the coping. Keep pressure on the tail and hold the manual until the back wheels bonk off the coping and you can rest on the deck. At this point, all your weight should be over your back foot and centred on the tail of the board. You will also need to make sure your tail isn't sitting inside the ramp and flush with the transition itself, as this will prevent you from having the leverage you're going to need for the pop. For anyone starting out with this trick, just the act of getting into a blunt stall can be very daunting and it can cause a huge problem from the get-go. The way to get around this is to spend some time rolling up into a blunt stall, but immediately leaning forward and rolling onto the deck. You can start by going almost too fast and hitting your tail off the coping as you fly out of the ramp. As you get comfortable with this, begin to slow things down and work on resting your board in the blunt position before rolling onto the deck, even if just for a second. As you get comfortable doing that, focus on keeping your weight centred so you can rest on top and begin keeping your weight inside the ramp. By keeping your weight inside the ramp, you'll be putting yourself in the best position for coming back in fakie. Once you're comfortable getting into blunt, it's time to look at getting back out. This is usually the most difficult part of this trick, as it requires both the skill of popping the tail and the willingness to commit. This is why I always recommend exploring a few other variations before attempting to pop in. Let me show you. The first variation I'd always recommend is a blunt drop fakie. Having this one figured out can be a massive advantage, as you can practice keeping your body weight inside the ramp, leveraging for the pop and keeping your shoulders square for coming back in fakie. All of this without having to deal with the fear of hanging up. The second variation I'd recommend is a blunt grab to fakie. You see, grabbing a blunt and pulling it back to fakie is one of the easiest ways to do a blunt trick, as it requires no technique. You don't need any leverage in the tail, you don't need to worry about hanging up. All you need is the ability to rest your board in blunt, grab a hold and commit. From here you also have the freedom to choose any grab you're comfortable with. By far the easiest and most common grab appears to be the nose grab, but I've personally found that mute grab is a great selection, as having your hand crossed over your body allows you to feel more comfortable and secure when coming back in fakie. Now it's time to discuss how we can pop the board in. The first thing you need to do is have the right amount of leverage on the tail to generate the pop. The key here is to make sure the tail isn't resting inside the transition, but rather on top of the coping. The second step is to pop the tail. To do this, you simply need to mimic the pop as you would for an ollie. Snap your tail down so it ricochets off the transition. As your back wheels release from the coping, allow gravity to do its thing and wait for your board to fall back into the ramp. As this is going on, you want to ensure your front foot does absolutely nothing. As you can see from this video, it looks like I'm dragging my front foot up the nose as though I'm trying to recreate an ollie. It's important that you don't focus on trying to do this, as this will happen naturally. I'm going to repeat that. Focus on doing absolutely nothing with your front foot, as if you think about this too much, you only end up creating unwanted issues, and I know you don't want that. From here it's just a matter of committing to the landing and rolling away fakie. It's possible that the information in this video so far might be enough for you to figure this trick out, but it's far more likely that you're going to face another challenge, the hang-up. Whether this is an issue or not is going to depend on the ramp you've chosen. Because you must rely on gravity to bring this trick in for you, if the ramp you've chosen is too small or the transition is too mellow, then it's almost certain that gravity alone will not be enough to stop your front truck from hanging up. So what's the solution? The solution is to land the back foot on the tail again once the back wheels release from the coping, and hold the manual as you descend fakie down the ramp. This might sound crazy, but trust me when I say it's a lot easier than it sounds. All you have to do is focus on hovering your back foot over the tail of the board, Place it back on and immediately put pressure back on the tail so you can create the manual out. Even on the smallest of ramps, you'll only have to hold the manual for a second so your front wheels can clear. If you get to this stage and find you're struggling, you might want to experiment on different size ramps. Remember, the steeper the transition, the easier this will be, and the less likely you'll have to manual out to avoid hanging up.
And that's how you blunt fakie. Like, comment, subscribe and all that fun stuff. I'll catch you in the next video. Yay!